let me,
We can
can
continue
I,
the conversation,
yeah, hang on one second. Can I just take a break real quick? I think I've got a story different than most people.
right? So we're just finishing up our the transcription part to our interview, the before the scenes, before this recording, for the International Euphonium Summit. Amazing content and material. Really something you want to. I mean, it's all about just entering your email to get the transcripts to this. There's no paywall for that. There is a there will hopefully be volumes in hardcover, but that will be at cost because I am such a book nerd. I forgot to tell you about that. I love hardcover books, and if you want to do that, great. Shipping, handling, and the cover of the book. Um, and yeah, so with further ado, I want to really extend my deep appreciation for our guest today, um, Aaron VanderWeele.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you. Thanks so much for hosting this and for the whole idea. It's a real thrill and a privilege to be with you.
Well, it's a thrill and a privilege to have you on as our guest. And you know, Aaron VanderWeele was named the 2007 International Euphonium Player of the Year, only the third American to receive this prestigious recognition. Currently serves on the faculties of Mason Gross School of Arts at
Yep.
Rutgers University, the State
Yep.
University of New Jersey, and the New Jersey City University's Music Department of Music, Dance, and Theater. I'm tempted to go back over, but I want to let people know it's okay to make mistakes if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, no, no.
Okay.
The only thing is I'm no longer with NJCU.
So
I'm
he
just
has
teaching.
been part of them. So
There
we'll
you
go
go.
ahead and say he has been with them. Yeah.
There you go.
he is he currently serves or has served on, which he is at right now in his office. I got to see it at Rutgers University, which is really amazing.
Mm.
He is also a buffet crampon artist, and plays exclusively on the Best in Prestige 2052 Euphonium. Has that
That's great.
changed at all?
Nope, it has not. Nope.
Do you have a baritone also by chance? I'm curious.
I do not. The band uses Yamaha Neo instruments, so if I was going to, I would use that, but I don't own one personally.
Okay, cool. Just interesting to see what other kind of that's kind of on the questionnaire too. So we kind of hit
Mm.
that. He has also been
Yeah.
the featured soloist at the U.S. Army Band Tuba Euphonium Workshop. He's a frequent guest artist at the Northeast Regional Tuba Euphonium Conference (ITEA) International Tuba Euphonium Association. For nearly 20 years, he has been distinguished euphonium soloist of the New York Staff Band. He has performed at prestigious venues including Carnegie Hall with Elton John and Lincoln Center with the Canadian Brass and Principal Brass of the New York Philharmonic. Solo performances include the Royal Albert Hall, Queen Elizabeth Hall, amazing venues, Phillips
Mm.
Arena, and Princeton University. He has also performed with the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra and West Point Band, which the interview yesterday, we had the privilege of having the new appointee to the Point Band Euphonium
Oh,
Section,
fantastic.
Ada Brooks.
Great.
Yeah, um,
Great.
his extensive disco, discography. See,
There you
I
go.
okay. Includes solo performances on 23 professional recordings and 4 solo recordings. His latest recording, Panaki or Panache, how do you
There you go.
pronounce it?
Panache. Yep.
Panache.
Panache.
Okay.
Yeah.
Received high praise from the Brass Herald. The complete mastery of the euphonium that Aaron VanderWeele displays throughout his recording means that the listener is able to forget about technique and all such physical matters. One can just sit back and listen to the sheer music being performed. You know, as euphonium, and that was quoted by Philip Biggs. You know, as a euphonium performer, artist, you know, we don't really listen to other recordings as much because we like to analyze it and think of how this person did that or how they executed something. But for Philip Biggs to even say that, you can just melt into the music. My
Mm,
words, melt into the
mm.
music is a fantastic. I'll leave the link to that CD below in the YouTube and all the channels that this will be a part of. His students have distinguished themselves by winning Euphonium scholarships to attend the UNT University of North Texas to study under Dr. Brian Bowman, now David Childs, Euphonium Studio, University of Georgia, the Eastman School of Music, the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and Interlochen Arts Academy. Aaron is a man of faith and family who is passionate about encouraging others to develop their God given ability. If you couldn't get that before with the transcripts, you'll certainly see it now and want to dive into those transcripts. He lives in New Jersey and has two boys.
Right.
Welcome to the
Thank you very
this
much.
year's International Euphonium Summit. So proud to be part of this and to have you as a guest, and completely humbled that I get to sit here and be in the presence of all these amazing international artists, to the composers, to the conductors, to the directors, and going over that. I think we let's see. I want to go back. Okay, so he is also the music director of the Princeton Brass Band,
That's right.
which is not part of that bio, and I will make sure to add that in there and send you over a copy of what I wrote, if you want it. Anyway, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, so let's just dive right into this because we've been blessed and honored to have him not on just this one time, y'all. I've already asked him to, with the time crunch and the crazy week that this has really transcended to be. If you get to read the transcripts beforehand and see where I'm at sitting as we record this session, you'll understand why I want to. I had asked him to come back and be part of a part two, maybe other parts here soon in the future as well. But he has agreed to come back and share his passion for mentoring the artists at any level,
Mm,
any musician, any family member. Man, that was gold. What you already provided, just letting you know that that was beyond the value of. I
mm.
mean, this is all free. I mean,
Right.
as a teacher, as our teachers have taught us, to pay it forward and to make the biggest impact you can. And this is one of the biggest opportunities that we have, and I don't see any other instruments doing it yet. And this is a control for what is the possibility for every instrument after the euphonium. Notice how
Mm,
I put that after the
hmm.
euphonium. I want to make sure that this is a viable idea, platform, sustainable in every which way. And if you happen to be an instrumentalist or a vocalist or any business opportunity, and we kind of sort of covered that, well, he did at the beginning. It's about finding your place in life, whether you're, going to be a musician or a professional artist or however you may be, or a doctor or a dentist or any facet you find yourself in.
Hmm.
This is for you. You can
Mm.
glean something from this interview, all these interviews, specifically everything. It's amazing. So, when did you first start playing euphonium? Let's go back into that story and kind of pick that
Absolutely.
story apart.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, growing up in church, basically what my role was kind of taking part in the junior brass band at my church. And when I first started, I was 7 years old, and they stuck a little cornet in my hand. and really didn't care much for that at all. Had literally very little interest in that. I played sports growing up, and I was far more taken with that than I was music at the time. But then around the age of 13, I developed braces. I had to get some correction done with my teeth and started growing bigger. I'm a big guy, I'm about 6'4", and that growth spurt started around that time. And all of a sudden in our junior brass band, a couple kids moved away. There was a need for someone to pick up the euphonium or baritone. And so they stuck that in my hand. And so I've been playing euphonium since 13. So I hit 50 this year. So you do the math. So
Right.
it's
So
been a long time.
you said a lot of people, maybe parents and such, know the word baritone. And if this is your first time and first interview that you've listened to or watched on YouTube or listened on Audible, Spotify, whatever medium you're listening or digesting this information, baritone is also, it's been synonymous with euphonium, and it's not necessarily the same. So
Right.
with baritone, you mentioned baritone. Did you get a baritone at first and then euphonium, or how did that work?
Nope, they went straight to euphonium. The kids that left our band, one was playing baritone, one was playing euphonium. They were brothers. They had to move away, and so what our church had was an old Besson Imperial euphonium, and
Talking
so
about the
that
globe?
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And it had like these big kind of almost like pyramids is like on top of the valve caps, and it was like this lacquer thing. And I really didn't care for it all that much, but it was something different than what I had been playing. And because I had grown in size, kind of found it interesting. And so started practicing that. And just around the same time that happened, something happened that changed my life completely, and that was the emergence of a guy who moved to our neck of the woods, who became kind of our regional music person in Southern California, in Los Angeles, where I was living. And he played euphonium, and he was from Britain, and he sounded different, and there hadn't been anybody kind of like that. And all of a sudden, there was this guy, and he took interest in young people. He was kind of this very cool person, took interest in us, and he played in the bands, and he took our junior band. It's like, wow, this guy plays the same instrument and he makes this incredible sound. And I started kind of locking into that. And then one thing led to another. And very quickly at that point, 13, 14, 15 years old, did that start to take off. And I can remember on my on the inside where you're kind of your handlebar kind of meets
Uh-huh.
where the bell is. Started practicing so much that my hands started turning blue every night from practicing, and it was just rubbing up against
The
that
brass.
bell. Yeah, exactly. And shortly thereafter, about a year or so of that, my parents kind of thought it would be time maybe to upgrade and get me in my own euphonium. But I'll never forget that. But it was really the injection of that person into my life that it was just like, wow, something clicked, for me as a person. And that was at a very important time in my own development. And my life would be completely different. I don't know what I would be doing, but it would not be music if it wasn't for that and the church that I was growing up in. But something clicked, and all of a sudden that took shape in terms of me enjoying playing music for the first time in my life and practicing it. Because otherwise, I would be practicing sports or something like that, or playing sports, but then all of a sudden, took music took hold, and it just took a different shape for my life.
Well, that's really amazing. Do you care to share us your mentor's name at first?
Yeah, sure. His name is Chris Mallett. He is sadly he left us far too young. Scary for me that we are now the I am the age that he passed away. He was taken from us with a sudden heart attack. He was fit as a fiddle. I mean, looked perfect. Didn't have an ounce of fat on him, and just a lovely guy. He was a Welshman. With a terrific sense of humor. He loved sports. He loved, just having a good laugh. But Chris Mallett, and he was our what we would call in the Salvation Army our divisional music director for my region, and he actually ended up going to church at the same location, so the same
Wow.
local church as me, and so I got a front row seat every week, every Tuesday night and Sunday morning, was just kind of spent around him in his presence. And one thing led to another in terms of that kind of, that was the, it lit something for me. And wow, it just kind of captivated all my intrigue and my interest as a young person, and still does today. And I still think I have a picture here in my office of me and Chris just hanging out at a kind of Salvation Army music camp. And we used to have lessons there, but we just used to hang out, maybe play duets and just talk about, whatever, we just had a great time. But yeah, it was, Chris was a very, very special person in my life.
That would be awesome. If I could, um, I'll follow up with you on that after this,
Sure.
because I think we have a really awesome way to start off our the next interview process. And
Yep.
this, oh man, this is going to be so
Yeah.
good. Um,
Yep.
so when did you first realize that you wanted to pursue this really as a dream career?
It really emerged for me. I was coming to a crux in my life. I had started going to school. After high school, I was in college, but I really didn't know what I wanted to study. I thought it would be music because I had advanced in music and I was good at playing my instrument. I didn't like the theory part of it. I didn't like the book part of it, but I loved playing my instrument. And I had a part-time job that started to kind of creep in. It became more like a full-time job. I worked in retail sales in a mall, in an athletic shoe store called Foot Locker, which many people can relate to all around the country. And I had a great boss there that had me on. So at the time, instead of becoming a part-time worker, long story short, they had me on basically every day so that if I wasn't, going to church and playing my instrument or taking a couple classes, then I was there working. They were going to have to shut that down. They wanted to either force me in a direction of becoming like a managerial role and taking up as an assistant manager and kind of going through their kind of like process and protocol. So I was either going to do that or I was going to do the school thing. So my dad and I talked, and he reached out to some friends via the Salvation Army. And one thing led to another. And they told us that actually in New York, the New York Staff Band, which is one of the Salvation Army, has several staff bands. It's really the premier bands of the Salvation Army, similar to, if I'm doing some lingo kind of breakdown, it's
Sure,
similar
yes,
to the
please.
yeah, premier bands of, like, military bands. There you have many military bands, right? But you have the premier bands, Pershing Zone, the President's Zone, and such like that. There's only a select few of those. Well, there's only a select few premier bands of the Salvation Army that are staff bands. At the time, I believe there were seven around the world: New York, London, the International Staff Band is kind of like the top of the tier, New York Staff Band, Canadian Staff Band, Chicago Staff Band. Well, the New York Staff Band, which is the oldest staff band and for our country here, is the most prestigious in our country. They had been without a euphonium player, without a euphonium soloist for some time, and they were looking for someone.
No way.
So a door opened up, and they said, would I be interested in kind of like making an inquiry in terms of would they be interested.
Wow.
And so that door opened up. I came for an audition when I was 19. They liked me. I liked the band and seemed to like the area. I knew no one here. But just by that, walking through that, got the blessing of my parents that I would be able to do that. It was very difficult for them to let their firstborn son kind of walk off into the sunset to a place that he knew no one. But they knew the people and the pedigree of people that they were sending me off to. And so, we all come to kind of crossroads in our life. And so I took a step into that in faith. You and I are people of faith. But I knew that this was going to be something positive for me, that it could enable me to continue doing what I love, which is playing my instrument. And so really that kind of like, it's something that I firmly believe that God had planned for me for my life. And just went into that, and so I took that step. And this is now I am now celebrating my 30th year here, and in both in the band, in my job at the Salvation Army. So I would say that it chose me, in terms of I knew what I loved doing, and it was a gift to play this instrument. Just from my church, and to be kind of given this as like people that kind of taught me. I didn't pay for lessons. I was part of this music, and it's kind of a plan that kind of unfolded for me. So I think it's a little bit different than probably most people's story, but it just was something that kind of took hold of my life very early on, and I'm the better for it.
I'm writing down a note here to make sure. Um, you just I want to go back into your story when you're at Foot Locker, because maybe somehow, some way, someone's listening or watching this right now, and they're at I want to say like maybe Taco Bell or a Starbucks or a grocery
Yeah,
store or a chain retail, right? If they're at a retail location and they don't know where they're at, as far as what they really want to do, and they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? As cliche
right.
as that is, um, when I want to highlight this very as much as articulated as I can. You took the initiative. Did you? It sounds like you took the initiative to ask your dad for his advice.
Mhm.
Did,
Yeah, basically, I asked him. So what Foot Locker was going to do was they were no longer going to allow me to set my schedule because I had a manager that I worked with whereby it was guaranteed I was going to have Tuesday nights off and I was going to have Sunday mornings off, and that was so I could play my instrument, go to church, and that kind of thing. They were going to force me into a program and a training program so that I could become a manager because I was good at what I was doing, and then my schedule would be dictated to me and I would have to set that up, and all of a sudden, like the most important thing in my life, playing my instrument, might go away. So talk to my parents about that. I said to my because my dad had a lot of friends that work for the Salvation Army,
Mhm.
at a professional level. Hey, can you inquire with anybody at the Salvation Army? Is there's any jobs available that I may be able to go into? Because I need to earn money and I want to continue going to school, but like I don't want to give up the euphonium and I don't want to give up church. I really feel like this is something that's taking hold. It's become really part of my identity. I feel like it's good and it could lead to a future income and a future job that I would really enjoy. So he then reached out to some friends, and he had heard from some people that actually people in New York had heard about me and my development in euphonium. They were looking for a euphonium player.
Right.
They had had a very well established player, but he had suffered a heart attack and he had to move off of euphonium onto the first baritone spot. So they were without that kind of end chair euphonium, soloist kind of thing. And it might be a good kind of fit for them to bring someone in who is younger, who could kind of grow into that role and kind of be that kind of fill that seat, if you will, for a longer period of time rather than someone who maybe just be able to, would be a stopgap for a few years or something. So that's when I became aware of the New York Step Band. That's when that seed was planted. But I knew nothing of it. So, they flew me out for an audition and I played with the band for a number of important engagements, a number of different concerts and public relations events and things like that. We had one that I won't forget. We had to play at the United Nations. So, as a 19-year-old kid from California playing at the United Nations on this blustery fall, I think it was early spring, that I had to play down there with the band. And then we took a weekend visit away and spent a full weekend with the band and thought, well, this was what life would be like. And then if you play in the New York Step Band, you also have to kind of work for the Salvation Army. You have a desk job where you do something that kind of you're not playing all the time. So it's kind of a combination of playing and office work as well. So that's what ended up working out for me. And so 6 months after my audition, they had worked out all the logistics, all the red tape, and all that kind of stuff, and they offered me a full-time position. And in the fall of 1993, I came to move here and have not returned. So I've
So
been here that whole time.
so you mentioned that the euphonium performer and the staff band had been medically, in a way, medically reassigned to first chair baritone. Did he
That's
take
right.
the mantle of mentoring you in your early years?
Yeah, I would say more in a passive role and more of a type of grandfather role or second father role where he was just full of wisdom. A lovely guy named Thomas Mack, who was the band's principal euphonium for many years, a composer, a Salvation Army minister, but was known as that kind of that end chair player in the New York State band for many years. And he was just someone that I could look over and just in the band setting, and he would give me a wink or he would nod his head in agreement with something that I was doing. And I had so much respect for him because I had listened back in those days. It would have been LPs and recordings and cassettes that we would have listened to whenever the band came out with something. There was a powerful recording that the band did with Philip Smith and Dudley Bright called Principles. And that was a just an absolute milestone recording that pretty much everyone within the Salvation Army was listening to in the banding world. And it was solos by these two gentlemen, and Tom was playing band in that. So I was very well aware of his prowess. So I was looking for him. So it wasn't lessons per se, but it was kind of like pointing out things that would be, I would like to have as like someone taking me under their wing. And actually, truth be told, when I first came to the band, very wisely, the conductor of the band, who is a very good friend of mine, Ron Wakes Norris, he did not want the pressure of me being on the end right from the start. So I actually spent my first kind of year of the band as playing the band's number two euphonium. I did stand up and play solos, but he felt it would be helpful for my development if I kind of was like that. We've got football going on these days, right? So if you draft a young quarterback, maybe sometimes you don't want to put him into the mix into these live bullets in a game time situation. You might want to have him sit on the sidelines and just kind of take it all in first. And that's kind of what Ron's approach was with me playing number two euphonium. So I sat underneath the top guy for, the guy that had been there. And I would stand up and play solos, but I had been used to doing that for many years at that time.
That's fascinating. That really is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm blown away by just like kind of recounting the story and just seeing how just, uh, it was kind of that life was kind of chosen for me. And all I had to do is kind of walk through the doors that were open.
and step into
And I'm
them.
so yeah, and I think that sometimes kids are paralyzed by fear. I've seen that very much. Like I've been teaching now in higher education for over 10 years. And sometimes I'll see a young person just kind of completely paralyzed by fear. What if this doesn't go well? What if I don't succeed? What if I'm not good enough? And here's this door that's open, and you're just trying to give them a loving, gentle kind of push and just kind of speak into them. No, you are good enough. Give it a shot. You never know what's going to happen. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't walked through that door for whatever reason, my life would be completely different, and I probably would be the best euphonium player at the Foot Locker. That would be about it. So, that's about it. But I'm so glad that it wasn't that I stepped through that door.
Oh, absolutely. And I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah,
That's just brilliant. I mean, it's exactly. I, I'm I am certain that it's exactly what someone who is hearing all this and seeing all this needs to hear in that moment. And if that really impacted you, leave a comment that on whatever medium that um, you're you've heard this at, and
yeah,
let Aaron know what impact that has made on your life if you get a chance to, and if you remind yourself to go back and throughout all these interviews, I ask others that did you reach back out to them and let them know that impact that you've made, that you've had from that person. And more times than not, it's no, I forgot. And you see that this essence of true passion that emanates, that comes forth from these amazing individuals that are our guest here. And what better way to show them that passion and that authenticity, that sincereness, the sincerity and all that. There's nothing better than to share the impact that you've received with the one that you have been impacted by. And certainly from our Euphonium studio members and stuff like that, we'd love to, keep in touch and see how they're doing, see where they're at, and maybe they won't say what kind of impact we've had on them, but that's not why we do it. It's to know that they're successful.
Mm.
So we covered before this recording video about pursuing it as a dream career, and then the equipment that you started on was a brassy Globe Besson. And if you want to dive into that, you can certainly do that. I'm not going to cover it too much on here, but you ended up. Your parents were so supportive. I'm kind of recapping that whole part of the interview for those that haven't, that aren't into the transcripts. You're going to want to check out the transcripts. It's really rich. I'm not going to go over that because I would love to see people take initiative, but there's no barrier of entry except for an email address. So if you want to dive into that, you certainly may. When you, as you're a teacher right now, looking back, even 20 years ago, we didn't have all this tech. What do you recommend as a studio teacher, as a studio professor? What do you recommend your students having as far as equipment or apps or devices that can really take their playing to another level?
Yeah, there are a few. I'm not so much a gadget person where I don't like to spend people's money, but there have been a few things that have been super important in the development of, first and foremost myself, and then what I've seen for that work really well for students and their success. Um, Very often, students will get used to playing in a practice room. So I like to build resistance in when we're practicing, whether it's a mute, whether it's a small travel mute that fits in the bell, I use the best brass, small travel mute. Now there's iterations of that, like the Dennis Wick travel mute. I also have a Dennis Wick Euphonium practice mute, which is a lot larger. It's a big black mute that kind of stays at home. And that's for really kind of kicking my butt and really making me work really, really hard. This time of year, I'm doing quite a lot of that. The band is on hiatus for a good portion of the summer. So I need healthy breaks during the summer. So I take some breaks. I do some golf. I spend more time with my family than I'm allotted to, during a busier time like fall and spring. So it's very important to utilize, resistance, practice when I practice. I also highly recommend practicing with drone to improve your pitch. Certainly the apps, there's no reason for anybody today to not practice with a metronome. Even back in the day when I first started, I had one of those big, kind of pyramid things that that kind of thing. You move like the nozzle up and
Uh-huh.
down just to kind of, increase or decrease the tempo. But your mute, your metronome, and then your app for your drone, that type of thing, very, very important. Um, uh, One of my current head of brass at Rutgers University right now is Kenny DiCarlo, and he's very big into the breathing bag. So he has a Tom Wooten breathing bag that I find very, very beneficial. And it just engages my air, and I'm working at my air, so breathing exercises and things like that. That's something very intentional that I've gone into recently. And again, I recommend this type of thing to my students because I've seen success both for myself and on a firsthand basis, but also for my students and others as well. I think the kind of caveat here that I want to make sure that is mentioned, it's implied, but I want to be very articulate about it, is that if you're serious about this, you have to be intentional, right? If you're, so whatever it is, whatever device it is that you're going to use, I think that's all well and good. You have to be intentional about your practice. And if there's not intention and motivation in your practice, I think it can you can wander a bit, and if you're being lazy about that, I think that's an important ingredient that you can't just throw money at. So sometimes people aren't intentional about practice, and so they're going to throw money at this device and that device, and it's like, I'm throwing all this money, and that's going to fix the problem. We're so used to just kind of like getting things in a minute. If you don't have that intentionality and that motivation to be excellent, and that let that drive you, you can throw all the money at devices and different gear you want. It's not going to fix the issue. So you have to look internal first, right? So I would think, those things are helpful as well. But so those are just some of the things that I like to recommend to students and to colleagues.
That's awesome. Okay, so that's interesting because we've covered quite a significant amount of well, we've covered a lot, but we have so much more to like really dive into as compared to
Mhm.
other interviews, and which is really awesome. And as those that are reading the transcripts knows that the time crunch is getting pretty slim here, so I'm trying to give as much value with our guest here and with you watching or listening to this for part one here of the interview. Uh, let's dive into the intentionality of practice and how you would help set up a student for success in your studio per se if they weren't really like 100% sold on that intention yet. How do you go about that process of implementing or helping them implement a structured practice?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's probably the thing that I see students struggle with most is, especially students that I encounter, undergrad students who are kind of coming out of the structure of high school and into the freedom to make choices of their own. And so they want to do everything. They want to explore it all. They've been told that for 4 years in high school, college is for exploring and all that. So you have it both with your chosen career profession and all of the other kind of electives that you can choose. But the choice is yours, right? So that time crunch, it gets so important. And so one of the things that we have to do with students is really time management and just kind of getting into how are you using that time that you have. It's the most important commodity we have. Once we spend it, we can never get it back. And teaching someone that sometimes is a difficult lesson for them to learn, because they want to do everything. They want to do that. So you usually it's not so much something that I can tell someone. Unfortunately, it's something that they have to kind of go through and experience. And maybe, I heard a phrase recently: decisions determine destiny. DDD, decisions determine destiny, right? So however you decide to use that time, however you decide to, what you're going to do when you go to college, or if you're going to study euphonium or any other instrument, those decisions are going to impact your future, right? So you have to be very, very serious about that. And if you are in school, if you're investing all this time, money, and energy in going to school for music, then I would say to you that you probably have to be pretty intentional about that. And yes, all of those other things are true, that you have to kind of, that you should encounter lots of other things, whether it's electives or doing marching band or doing whatever it is that you want to do. Some kids come to our school because we are part of the Big Ten conference now. So Rutgers plays Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. They get and they're playing in front of thousands of people. It's super exciting, right? They want to do that, but it's a big, and we have a wonderful program, and I love Todd Nichols who does that for us. He's a great guy, and you can learn so much, but you have to be understanding that that's going to take a lot of your time. And if you're a music ed student at Rutgers, it's a very rigorous program. And then if you're taking lessons with me, I'm going to demand that you're on your instrument too, and I'm pushing you in all those ways. So that intentionality, I think, and really kind of discovering ways to practice, and it doesn't always have to be that 2 hour practice session. If you've got 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, I'm a busy person myself, and where I can, I'm finding ways to just get on the horn and stay in, really, really on top of my game. So it's discovering that whole part of that, and and then really making sure that the decisions are matching up with what your goal is in the end, and always keeping an eye on that goal. Probably the best advice I could give a young person transitioning into college studies.
So that right there brings up a question that's not on the questionnaire, obviously. Um, is going back to your Footlocker experience, how did you fit practice into your work schedule?
Yeah, so I mean, back then it was so much fun, and the gains were coming so quickly. I would just I don't know, man, my parents must have been super cool with just me practicing really late at night, you know. And back in those days, I don't think I had a mute back in those days, and we didn't have a big house. So, I mean, I've been back to that area since, and the houses are not that far apart. So I don't know how we didn't have neighbors like knocking on the door at like 11 o'clock at night.
Oh man.
You just find time to practice, and you're younger. So I mean, like I'm 50 years old. I can't imagine, some of the times practicing now that I used to practice. But I think you make time for what's important for you,
Absolutely.
right? So when I was like in high school, I would come home, and I could just remember coming home, and I would say my practicing took priority over my homework. I couldn't wait to get home and practice my instrument. Whereas my dad would probably say to you, I probably should have spent more time in the books, for history. Or, I mean, I'm terrible at math. It's not my favorite thing. Um, and so like, that probably could have done with a lot more, but I just didn't have that appetite for that. But I sure did. I could spend 3 hours practicing my horn when I got home from high school, and that was what I loved to do. It was just, it didn't feel like work at all. I just was discovering this new music, and I had this ability. So it's like, man, what more can I do? Let me find more and more music. So whether it was an Arbenz book or countless, different albums of solos, it was that kind of stuff. It was fun, and it was exciting for me.
So what was your so in those like moments of when you're when you had to really be intentional about practicing, especially after Footlocker, uh, for for those that are listening to how you did it, what was your progression and kind of framework and um, kind of process of that rehearsal time that you would take? Did you run scales first, long tones? How did you start the practice? Even though you
Yeah.
wanted to,
Mhm.
what kind of guidelines did you give yourself?
It's my background is pretty unorthodox in that, not really taking that formal lesson type of study. I really being involved in several different brass bands. When I first moved to, like, I left Foot Locker, and then I come to work for the Salvation Army. I'm part of the New York staff band. I was also participating maybe in three or four different brass bands at the time. So that in and of itself kind of helps take care of a number of important fundamentals. Staying in shape, being able to play phrasing, to play long. So my long tones were like hymn tunes with the brass band, or church settings of like hymns and that kind of thing. That's where I kind of would work on some of that stuff, and I would do that in my own personal practice as well. But you know, doing that kind of thing really helped, just kind of keeping me at a base level. If there was stuff that I really needed to work on in terms of solo playing, then I would become very intentional about that. And I would always find etudes, whether it's in, different things like Clark method book, or Koprosh, or Arbin, to kind of help work through any type of issue that I was having in technical music that I was playing in terms of a solo, or it would be rarely in a band piece. Back in the day when I first transitioned here, the band music wasn't quite as challenging as some of the music that we play currently. But solo playing, I always wanted to play whatever like my heroes of Euphonium were playing. I would get the music to that, and I would want to kind of chomp at that and kind of work at that. If there was a practice technique that I needed to, or key that I needed to spend more time in, then I would find, materials to help support that. So I chose music first, and then etudes that would help support that or work on whatever fundamental it was for me. But the baseline would be playing in the brass bands, doing that, keeping my playing at a high level. That also helped me work at my sight reading, because playing in a number of different brass bands, you're always working at your sight reading, your rhythm, and all that kind of thing. And over that time, you get used to reading ahead and becoming more savvy to your sight reading, so you can become a better ensemble player. But yeah, personal practice was all about really music supported by etudes.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great stopping point in our interview because not only that is, I want to recap with those that are hearing you right now, watching you go over and recap this. He actually covered a good portion of what it is like being in the brass bands per se, in Salvation Army, in the transcriptions. And I invite you to come and check those out because we really dive into the locale of these brass bands and how to get involved with them. And all those links will be listed below anyway. However, if you want to learn more about that, dive into the transcripts. More than welcome to, and then come back for our second part of our interview. That will be listed in order on eventually as this progresses because we have so much more content, y'all. It's really amazing to have our guest Aaron VanderWeele just share this amazing knowledge and background because yes, it's unorthodox, but someone that's listening, you may identify as your ability is unorthodox, or you just need that extra something, you don't know what it is, and somehow you're here listening to us at this point. Something synced in with you, and there's a reason. Explore that reason. Just like he was mentioning, you explore what etudes would work well with a solo or whatever. Is if you're feeling that notion of there's something here, I don't know really what it is, leave a comment below. Reach out to him over at Rutgers. Send him an email or just leave a comment. There's so many professionals that are just really loving this opportunity to share their experiences with you, with your family member who is playing or considering euphonium as a career. This is really amazing. This
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Absolutely.
So we invite you back on and
Yep.
to continue to listen, to watch, and to actually do. Don't think about it.
Yep.
You know you need to do it. Just go do it. Um,
Yeah.
and with that being said, thank you all for joining us for this segment of the International Euphonium Summit with our guest Aaron VanderWeele. And we invite you to come back and join us next time. And if you want to take a lesson with him and you're in that area for some reason, or want to check out the New York Staff Band for one of their performances, let us
Yep.
know with a comment below. Reach out to him. There's so many ways to check that out.
Yep.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
my yeah, reach out to my personal email, contact me, friend me on Facebook. Yeah, if there's anything that I've said that's resonated, you have questions about, or you just want to hit me up, you'll find that I'm very approachable. I love talking any of this stuff. And there's no stupid questions or anything like that. I'd love to hear from you.
And if you end up being a golfer and there's a course and you want to have him come out and teach a master class or so, and
If
have some,
you want to send me a teacher, that'd be great, because I'm terrible at golf.
well, he likes to do that as a hobby, so
Right. That's
to
right.
help his game. Anyway, thank you
Yeah.
all so much. Thank you, Aaron, for joining
Yep.
us with
My
this
pleasure.
amazing gift for us.
My pleasure. Thanks
Can't
again.
wait to talk soon. Thanks everyone for
Okay.
stopping by.
Thank you. Yep. Take
Bye.
care.